The world knew him as a billionaire who owned skyscrapers, luxury apartments, and entire blocks of prime real estate across America. But on one ordinary evening in his private New York penthouse, he watched something on television that made him freeze in disbelief. A single mother was being forced out of her apartment while cameras captured every heartbreaking moment. She stood on the sidewalk holding her young daughter's hand, surrounded by boxes containing everything they owned. Then the camera zoomed in on the building behind her, and the billionaire's heart sank. He recognized the address. It was one of his buildings. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe kindness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Ethan Caldwell had spent most of his life building an empire. At 48 years old, he was the founder of Caldwell Heights, a real estate company that owned luxury apartments, commercial towers, and residential communities throughout the United States. His name appeared in business magazines, financial reports, and charity events. People saw him as a man who had everything, but behind the expensive suits, private meetings, and billion-dollar decisions was a man who rarely stopped long enough to see the people affected by those decisions. Ethan believed his company helped create opportunities by providing housing, but he depended on executives and managers to handle the details. He trusted reports, numbers, and profits more than personal stories. That night, after a long day of meetings at his Manhattan office, Ethan sat alone in his apartment watching the news. He wasn't looking for anything serious. It was just background noise while he reviewed documents. Then a headline caught his attention. Single mother evicted after falling behind on rent. At first, Ethan barely looked up. Stories like this appeared on the news often, but something about the woman standing outside the apartment building made him stop. Her name was Hannah Brooks, a 36-year-old mother living in Brooklyn, New York. She had worked as a medical assistant for years, but after a sudden illness forced her to miss weeks of work, her financial situation collapsed. She had always paid her rent on time before that. She wasn't careless. She wasn't irresponsible. She was simply someone who had faced a difficult moment and couldn't recover quickly enough. The news showed Hannah standing beside her daughter, 8-year-old Sophie, as movers carried their belongings outside. The little girl held an old stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest while watching strangers remove the life they knew from their home. Ethan watched silently as Hannah tried to stay strong for her daughter. She wasn't angry. She wasn't blaming anyone. She simply looked exhausted. Then the reporter mentioned the address. Ethan leaned forward. The building name appeared on the screen. Caldwell Heights Apartments. His own company owned it. For several seconds, Ethan couldn't move. He looked at the television, then at the documents sitting on his desk. The apartment complex was one of hundreds under his company's management. He had never personally visited it. He had never met the residents. He only saw it as a line on a financial report. But now that line had a face. It had a mother. It had a little girl holding a stuffed animal on a cold sidewalk. Ethan immediately called his assistant and asked for the complete file on Hannah Brooks. Within minutes, he received the records. The paperwork showed late payments, legal notices, and eviction approval. Everything appeared normal according to company policy. But as Ethan continued reading, he noticed something disturbing. Hannah had requested a temporary payment arrangement after her medical emergency. The request had been denied without any personal review. Her account had been handled automatically. A system had made a decision about a human life. Ethan spent the rest of the night thinking about his own childhood. He remembered growing up in a small apartment with his mother after his father left. He remembered his mother working 2 jobs and worrying about rent every month. He remembered the kindness of one landlord who gave them extra time during a difficult period. That one act of compassion had stayed with him forever. The next morning, Ethan arrived at Caldwell Heights Apartments without telling anyone who he was. He wanted to see the place himself. He wanted to understand what had happened. The building looked nothing like the luxury properties shown in company advertisements. The hallway paint was old. The elevators needed repairs. Residents complained about slow maintenance and unanswered requests. Ethan realized he had built a company worth billions, but had stopped seeing the people living inside his buildings. He found Hannah's former apartment. The door was locked, and the hallway was empty. A neighbor told him that Hannah and Sophie were staying temporarily at a small motel nearby because they had nowhere else to go. Ethan drove there himself. When Hannah opened the door, she was shocked to see the owner of the company standing in front of her. She expected another official, another person coming to discuss paperwork. She never expected the billionaire whose name was on the building. But Ethan didn't come with lawyers or excuses. He came with humility. He listened as Hannah explained everything. She told him about working long hours, raising Sophie alone, and trying desperately to recover after her illness. She explained that losing their home wasn't just losing a place to sleep. It meant losing the one place where her daughter felt safe. Ethan realized that the eviction was legal, but that didn't mean it was right. He knew he couldn't undo the pain Hannah had already experienced, but he could decide what happened next. Ethan offered Hannah her apartment back and covered the missed payments personally, but he didn't stop there. He created a new emergency assistance program across all Caldwell Heights properties, giving residents temporary support during medical emergencies, job losses, or unexpected hardships. He also ordered every property manager to review eviction cases personally before making final decisions. Some people criticized him, saying he was changing policies because of one news story. But Ethan knew something important. A company wasn't measured only by how much money it made. It was measured by how it treated people when they were struggling. Months later, Ethan returned to Caldwell Heights for the opening of the new Resident Support Center. Hannah and Sophie were there. Sophie walked up to Ethan with a drawing she had made. It was a picture of their apartment building, their family, and a man standing outside holding a helping hand. Ethan kept that drawing in his office. For the first time in years, he felt like he was building something bigger than buildings. He was building hope. Hannah's life slowly improved. She returned to work, Sophie went back to school, and they kept their home. But the biggest change wasn't the apartment or the money. It was knowing that someone finally saw them. Sometimes people don't need someone to rescue them. Sometimes they just need someone powerful enough to notice their struggle and kind enough to care. If this story touched your heart, please support this video by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people who need a reminder that kindness still exists in the world. Before we reach the ending, comment kindness can change lives if you believe one compassionate decision can create a better future for someone. Years later, Ethan was still a billionaire. He still owned buildings and companies. But the moment he remembered most wasn't signing a billion-dollar deal or appearing on a magazine cover. It was the night he watched a mother and daughter lose everything on television and realized that behind every door in his buildings was a human story. That night changed him forever. Because sometimes the greatest wealth a person can have isn't found in a bank account. It is found in the lives they choose to change.